P&O are in my good books right now. They saved a cruiseless month with a last-minute Iona trip when other lines had forsaken me, and they accidentally filled it with taster cruises on a taster cruise instead of the standard issue Stags and Hens. When my parents took their first ever cruise in 2011, they chose Ventura and it literally set on fire. But is Ventura still fire 15 years later? Here, ladies and gentlemen, we go. Whoa, there it is. Now, I don't know if P&O are big cruise tube fans, or if they're just desperate to send a positive message to my 7 subscribers. But with 0 loyalty status and a buggo Seaview cabin booking, I got the 11:45 first board at Embarkation time. When I dropped my car at Links, there were about 6 other cars in the whole place, so I wondered if it was just a quiet cruise. It wasn't, as you will see later. Regardless, I parked at 11, I reached Ocean Terminal at 11:15, and I was inside by 11:25. Through security by 11:38, and I stepped on board at 11:43 and a half. Now, I'm old enough to remember when Ventura was brand new and enormous. Now, it's approaching classic status, and in the current cruise market, it's a medium-sized ship. The Atrium is dainty, smaller even than Scarlet Lady's roundabout, though not quite as small as Arcadia's. Yes, Arcadia has an Atrium, and it features a similar, if less glitzy, light fitting at the top. The crisscrossing staircases and glass lifts give it a proper centerpiece feel. And it's not dissimilar vibe to the princess ships that it's based on. Sort of Princess Light, a Meghan Markle, if you will. You'll find customer services, future cruise sales, some shops and bars scattered around it over decks 5, 6 and 7. Now, I'm a big fan of glass lifts, and I always make an exception to my stairs-only rule when a ship has got them. Sadly, these ones are only glass for the 3 floors of the Atrium, but beggars can't be choosers. As well as somewhere to sit and sip a coffee or knock back a flaming sambuca, the open bit of the Atrium is used daily for exercise/dance classes, bit of trivia, old school parlour games, and the ever popular but utterly bewildering silent discos. On this cruise, less silent than one might hope. I'm getting ahead of myself. First things first, drop off my school bag and pick up my cruise card. I paid the cheapo fare for this cruise. It's only 4 nights, so parking or coach wasn't available for the extra, and I never bothered choosing my cabin anyway. Until I actually get a bad cabin. The good cabin, bad cabin is Emperor's new clothes to me. This one is right next door to the Boozer and Casino. First bad cabin? Nah, it was fine. I'm in a single sea view for the first time. Get a coffee and sit down. The cabin tour is about to begin. Bed, that's for sleeping. Window, you can look out of that. TV, that's if you get bored. Hang your clothes here. Dirty socks and pants go there. This is where you can shower. This is where you can poop. Cabin tour over. There's a bit of a mix of old and, not new, but less old. It's an olden days spare bedroom teeny TV. It does have a selection of video on demand and a bit of something for everyone in the movie section, and a load of old rubbish in the TV show section. Because P&O are big fans and got me on first wave, I didn't even feel the need to psych myself up for the buffet. I just confidently 2-stepped my way from deck 6 to deck 15. I was looking forward to feasting on some low-quality sustenance in the peace and calm that one would expect of a ship with only 100 or so guests on board. Obviously, God was laughing his head off as he watched me wrestle my way around the worst designed buffet yet encountered by any man on land or sea. And whilst hardly anybody had boarded yet, everyone that had was determined to try my shoes, socks and pants on whilst I was still wearing them. Absolute funking chaos. Now, If you saw my emergency Iona review, then you will remember these beasts. The ones that casually use my plate as a bin. Well, their sister was on Ventura. This disgraceful beast literally threw a napkin over her shoulder onto my table whilst I was sat there. And as I was gazing at it in incredibly handsome astonishment, a second one came over. Now, because I'm an easygoing dude, I picked one up and I threw it back. She turned, looked at me as if to say, "And what?" And I said, "Well, you're a full-grown adult woman. What are you doing?" And she said, "Funk off." But she didn't really say funk. And her and her buddies just carried on chatting and stuffing their faces as if that was normal. I don't like being crammed in, elbowed out of the way for a slice of pizza, or being bullied by rough old trollops. So this was enough to dissuade me from returning at mealtimes. I did, obviously, return late each night for coffee and snacks. I mean, I'm a delicate flower, but it's still a cruise ship. Ventura has 3 MDRs. That's main dining room, newbie. There's bay tree for traditional early or late sit-ins, or saffron and cinnamon for freedom dining. Now, when I booked, I selected traditional dining first sitting. I'm an old-fashioned boy and I quite like sharing a table with the same audience, people, of an evening. But because I paid the peasant fare, nothing was guaranteed and I ended up being given freedom dining. I went to reception and I asked if that could be changed, and they said no. I asked, "Can I book times in advance on the app like on Iona?" They said no. I inquired if a big sweaty bundle of cash would change their mind. They said yes. But I'm poor, so I joined the virtual queues. Saffron and Cinnamon are basically the exact same restaurant, one on top of another in slightly different colours. They serve the same menu at dinner, but only Saffron's open for breakfast and lunch. Now I'm a cool guy, so 15 minutes before opening, when the virtual queue opens for each meal, I stood outside the doors with the Not app open, hammering the refresh button until it said I was in the queue, and then that my table was ready. I'll deep dive everything I ate, good and bad, at every venue in a separate video. There are 3.5 specialty restaurants. Sindhu, a way popular Indian restaurant that everyone everywhere seems to love, but not me, so I didn't go. Then there's the Beach House. On Ventura, it's a section of the buffet that they gently tart up of an evening to flog what they claim is Caribbean/American/Mexican food. In addition to being literally sat in the buffet for my extra fee dinner, they also sat me at a table with a pillar right in front of me and a plate clearing station behind. So I couldn't see anything, but at least it was really noisy. I'm a glass half full kind of guy, so the way I look at it, at least all these much better position tables that nobody was using weren't wasted on me. Next up is Epicurean. Having a go at fine dining. Now, on the one hand, this is to fine dining what Pizza Hut is to Italian cuisine. But it's £35 all in. And when you think of it as a restaurant, charging £35 for 3 courses, coffee and, one petit four is a bit skanky. Well, it's a different proposition entirely. It's peaceful in here, the decor's nice, and you have to wonder, do their lobsters fall off the back of the same lorry as Ambassador's roast beef? Or, I suppose, submarine? The glass house is the half. Glass house half full? It's not a specialty dining venue exactly. You can't book it in the Not app, you just come along, but you do pay extra for anything that you eat here. It's an odd little mix of things really, and the layout is such that you're never really sure if you're in it or outside it. Primarily a wine bar, decorated like an Italian, serving Spanish tapas. I did have a glass of wine. Now, I don't really drink, so obviously by the time I was halfway through, I was sloshed, and I was hanging over the railings, screaming insults at seagulls. The food soaked up some of the alcohol, and I slept the rest off after lunch. There are frozen fries, cheapo burgers, and horse's hoof hot dogs available at the Poolside Grill. Walk or swim diagonally across the pool for some low quality pizza, or if the bullying trollops give you the fear, set up camp in your cabin and get some room service. Paid, but cheap. Before we dive headfirst into the bars on board, a cautionary tale. Whether you are the ladies in this anecdote, or the incredibly beautiful gentlemen, less alcohol would have been better for them, and more would have been worse for me. Either way, different but same. So, on gala night, as I emerged from the staircase onto deck 7, a young lady loudly asked me, "Doesn't she look nice? Tell her she looks nice." I looked at a friend and I said, "Yeah, she looks great." And I was about to make my exit when the friend said, "Ugh, don't just talk to random men. Men will say anything for you know what." Loud woman replied, "Oh, not him. Look how hot he is. Anyway, I bet he's gay. Are you gay?" Now I grasped this opportunity with both hands and I said, "Yes, yes, I am." And I left before anything more problematic occurred. I'd forgotten all about this by the time I was heading back to my cabin for bed. It'd been, 4 or 5 hours? And I'd been for dinner, seen a show, and wandered around aimlessly. Right next to the reception desk, I heard a familiar, if a bit more tipsy voice say, "Hey, gorgeous." I mean, I'm one of those people that would assume it was directed at me, even if I didn't recognise the voice. "Come back with us. We want to get taken from behind." Now, obviously, my first thought was that if I made a run for it, there was no way they would be able to catch me in heels. But then I thought, I might never get this opportunity again. So I said, "Stay there." And I took a couple of steps so that I was stood behind them. And I said, "I don't know who you are. I don't know what you want. If you're looking for ransom, I can tell you I don't have money. But what I do have are a very particular set of skills." And I did the whole speech, the full Liam Neeson. I expected at least a giggle or a groan at some point. I got all the way to the end and they didn't move or say a word. They seemed sort of frozen in time, possibly in a trance. Anyway, I took my chance and I dashed down the atrium stairs and I went into hiding. I'm just glad they didn't catch me when I was in the glass house. Drinks package or otherwise, Ventura has plenty of vodka vendors to remove your inhibitions. Let's start with the glass house, since we've been there already. It's an odd setup, a sort of room within a corridor. Its USP is the 1 million different bottles of wine, but they do flog cocktails, beer, and pipettes of purple aftershock too. And if you want to take a drink into the theatre to dull the tedium of Stephen Mulhern, this is the closest spot. The red bar's a bit naff. It's just some tables and chairs dotted around the atrium with some horrible beaded curtains / light fittings. And if you're in the atrium and absolutely desperate for a drink, well, I still wouldn't bother. The Tamarind Club is more my speed. It's one of 2 bars on board that are set up cabaret style. This one is on prom deck, at the back bit of the middle, between the Atrium and Sindhu. It's quite traditional, old-fashioned even. I assume by the name and its location next to Sindhu that it's supposed to have a sort of Indian vibe, but it seems more like a 1930s Chicago to me. I mean, I don't know what 1930s Chicago was like, but I imagine this. Anyway, this is where you'll find trivia and karaoke, disingenuous art lectures, and some proper musicians. This is also where comedians should be homed on Ventura, but at least on my cruise, the increasingly common cost-cutting measure of sticking one man on stage in the theatre was used. The other show lounge is Havana, also on prom deck, at the back of the back of the back. Supposedly, this is Cuban themed, but other than the name, I don't really know how. There isn't a huge variety of rum or anything like that, and when I was in Cuba, I didn't notice blue LEDs everywhere. Regardless, this is where you'll find lively background music from the in-house band. I saw an Elton John tribute act here on night 1. He went with the weird choice of opening with a song by The Who. He was decent. I'm not really what you'd call an Elton fan, but I enjoyed it. Now and then, he did sound a bit like Elton John, but even when he didn't, he sounded good. And he made a bit of an effort with his wig and costumes. You can just drop by either one to get sloshed, but they're set up so that everyone can see the wee stages, and both were often standing room only. Later in the evening, Havana becomes more of a nightclubby venue, Tamarind more of a relaxed piano bar with half a dozen people dotted around, like that scene in Pretty Woman, but a bit less graphic. The Exchange is Ventura's Weatherspoons. Now, a few of the crew I spoke to must have been working on other P&O ships not too long ago, because it was repeatedly referenced as Brody's. And if you know what Brody's is, then you know what the Exchange is. And if you don't, well, it's the Weatherspoons on other P&O ships. This is where you'll find half a dozen quizzes every day, football on the TV, and pints of beer. Ventura doesn't have a pool table or a dartboard, but if they did, this is where it'd go. There are half a dozen bars dotted around near swimming pools, but they aren't places to go. They're places to get a Coke or a yard of ale when you're laying on the lounge. The last venue bar is Metropolis, up on deck 18. It's the closest thing to a trendy bar on Ventura, with a video wall showing street scenes of New York or Paris or wherever. P&O advertise it as a jazz lounge, which it would be if they put some jazz on in there. I clambered up a million stairs to see the resident busker, who was good. And on another evening, I saw a pianist / singer, who was good but would have suited Tamarind better. I dropped in here for a coffee after a wander around the open decks one day, and for a while, I couldn't work out what I was finding odd about the place. I did eventually realise that it was because I had been thinking of it as a sort of crow's nest type venue, but it's actually at the rear. So you get views of where you've been rather than where you're going. Nothing wrong with that, and no point telling you, but, well, it's my video, so shut up. Also worth mentioning is that when you need to pee up here, you can practice your best cowboy lines as you kick open the saloon doors free whittle. The other place that you might head to for a coffee is Tazzine, the coffee shop. Facebook groups and Cruise Critic have taught me that for reasons unknown, a ship flogging Costa coffee is incredibly important and exciting. Well, on Ventura, this is that spot. It is actually very like your local Costa. The counter, furniture, bright lighting, it's all very high street. You pay for your drinks here, but the cakes and pastries are included. On a sea day, you won't be able to get a seat, so the coffee shop spills out across the tables and chairs around the atrium on deck 5, where you also won't be able to get a seat. Once you've eaten and had a drink, you'll want entertaining. The theatre on Ventura is a 785-seater, and for most shows, there was 785 bums in them. The seats are perhaps an inch too narrow, and you'll often bang elbows with your neighbours. The layout is great. Every seat has a clear view of the stage with no pillars or obstructions. It's got a bit of a lottery-funded arts centre vibe. I gather from pre-show chit-chat that the screens on each side are fairly recent additions. I don't know if the sound and lighting was upgraded too, but the sound in particular is way better than the more modern theatre on Iona, which I visited a few weeks earlier. I didn't take drinks in with me, but each seat does have a little flip-out table in the armrest, so if you want a theatre on an aeroplane vibe. The shows were a mixed bag. Night 1 was Stephen Mulhern's Unbelievable. The only unbelievable thing about this was that anyone thought Mulhern's big massive face on a big massive screen added anything to the show. Night 2 was a winner of some talent show or other doing a comedy pianist routine, and the ship's cast were back for Night 3, with a show tunes mashup and then a late night comedian. Night 4 was the Elton John tribute that I first saw on Night 1 in the cabaret bar. I'll deep dive all the entertainment in a separate video, so if you want to know who was good, who was bad, and who was ugly, take a look. During the day, the theatre shows the odd movie. Tamarind Cabaret Bar does a family screening too, but as a 42-year-old man travelling alone, I chose the less creepy option and skipped along to the theatre. The setup was fine. The image didn't fit the screen, but it was bigger than the portable in the cabin, and the sound was good. There was some kind of tech issue on the day, so they showed a Mission Impossible movie instead of the one that had been advertised. And I immediately imagined Ethan Hunt trying to negotiate the Ventura buffet, and finally accepting defeat. Right at the front of the ship, up high on deck 16, where Metropolis should be, is the gym. There's a decent selection of cardio kit, including treadmills, cross trainers, Nan bikes, and Nan's Nan bikes, a reasonable selection of resistance machines, a few free weights, and a wee studio space. I'll also do a deep dive gym and fitness video separately, so look out for that if you want the full lowdown. The Oasis Spa is here too. You can use the sauna and steam room free of charge, and all the usual spa services are available for extra charge. I would actually have quite liked to throw my shattered old body on the massage table, but I'm a bit fat at the moment and it didn't look that sturdy. The Ivory Suite is awkwardly stuffed up here too, so if you're thinking of getting married on Ventura, well, please save up for a bit longer and do it in a venue that isn't echoing with the screams of someone having their special area waxed or overlooking some pasty white British sunbathers. In theory, cruisers looking to mix up their exercise with a bit of sport can head up to the rear of the ship on deck 19 and use the sports courts. Now, Bob the Builder was hugging this whole area when I was there, so I assume that a lovely refurbed sport courts and golf swinging net will be waiting for you when you board. Speaking of swingers, there's news about that later too. There's also a deck up here with sun loungers. Ventura has a really convoluted design. It's a bit like someone designed a ship and then just kept bolting bits on. A bit like the episode of The Simpsons where Homer designs a car. When you're wandering around the outside decks, you'll find loads of bits of decks here and there. Plenty of dead ends that make you go back the way you came, and you'll spot areas that you can go if you can work out how to get there. It's a similar story in the prom deck, with doors in odd places and make-do stairs just plonked in place. It's sort of a wraparound prom deck. At the front, you can walk upstairs on port side and down again starboard to use the clamshell section to complete your loop. It was open on night 1, but that was obviously a mistake. There was no lighting. Fortunately, I'm very brave. And from then on, the clamshell section was closed. That was the first disappointment when it comes to my traditional daily 5k prom deck laps. The second was that a lot of the prom deck is pretty narrow, and a big section of it on the starboard side is a smoking area, which makes it very unpleasant for me to walk through. Not the smoker's fault. The rules are the rules. It's just one of those things. But the people smoking in non-smoking areas, well, for example, this charming creature who, when I politely said, "Oh, you can't smoke here, it's on the wrong side," and pointed to the no smoking sign that she was sat under, looked at it, then looked back at me, and she said, "Funk off." But she didn't really say funk. Ventura's got 4 swimming pools. Well, pools. If they ganged up like Transformers to create one giant super pool, a very small person might be able to do a short version of something similar to being in the area of swimming. Like almost all cruise ship pools, they're for standing rather than swimming in. The terrace pool is part of the comedy maze of decks and ladders that don't go anywhere at the aft on deck 14. There's a paddling pool up one for kids clubs, which doesn't really count. In the middle of deck 15 is the beachcomber pool with a slippy slidey roof. I particularly enjoyed the combination of freezing cold weather, rain leaking through the ceiling, and this thoughtful, complimentary iced water. A little further forward is Laguna Pool, which is outdoors and presumably much busier when it's not a grey November. Then up one deck at the front is the Oasis Pool, which is sort of part of the gym and spa complex, but not really. I'm not sure if this Colosseum-style seating is there for wet t-shirt contests or some kind of watery death match. Either way, it's weird, and thankfully it was not in use during my time on board. The ship shops are ship shops. Nothing that stands out. The usual mix of merch, tat, perfume, watches, inch of gold. And of course, outside duty free, a big queue of people who don't realise you can just buy gin in Asda. The photography gallery was as dead as they always are, though I did see the machine that they use for those weird eyeball pictures for the first time here. A bit like that thing that blows puffs of air in your eyes at the opticians. So that was exciting. I assume this area where the cruise maps are advertised was once photo stuff too. You know, back when people bought photos. The art gallery had the usual Clarendon stuff. Nothing wrong with it, but like always, it's decoration for the dining room wall. Not an investment. I went to the lecture about art thefts, and that was a pleasant half an hour or so. But I gave the Banksy / brainwash street art picture swerve this time, having sat through it on Arcadia and QM2 already. But would you believe it? This ship also had a super rare buy it whilst you can Banksy Lady Di £10 note that you just can't find anywhere. Like all 5 other Clarendon ships I've been on this year. I'm starting to think they might not be that rare after all. The guests on board were a bit of a mixture. There was at least one hen party, as is always a concern on a short trip. They were older ladies, and whilst they went in for the beauty pageant sashes and matching sailor hats, I didn't see them causing any drama anywhere. Obviously, there were my 2 rough mates on prom deck and in the buffet, but generally it was just a ship full of people trying to enjoy a wee break. The disposable buddies that I shared dining tables with were all perfectly pleasant company for an hour or two, but I never made any new BFFs. I was chatting with an older lady at late night snacks one evening who was telling me about this absolutely mind-boggling amazingness of the 4D virtual reality machine in the arcade, and I promised her that I'd have a go on it. As you can see, not that mind-boggling. The crew were all fine. Nobody upset me, but nobody made me think, wow, you're the greatest. Although my cabin steward did really try to do room stewarding on me, even though I told him on day 1, just have a sit down for 5 minutes when you're supposed to be servicing my cabin, and I left the do not disturb sign up to remind him. It always seemed weird to me that full-grown adults don't make their own bed on a morning. And who replaces towels daily in real life? I honestly don't think I've changed towels at my house since, 1994? Alright, the money. I paid £668 for 4 nights in a single ocean view cabin. I parked with Lynx again, which was £60.95b. I booked Epicurean before I boarded for £35 and Beach House for £11.50. I also chose an upcharge main in the Beach House, and that added £8. At the Glass House, I went for 3 tapas dishes for £10.50, and I went absolutely wild and had a glass of wine for £8.50. A couple of coffees and Diet Coke clocked in at £14.60, and I wasted £1.50 on that poxy arcade game. All in all, that gives us a grand total of £848.55, or £212.14 per night. And that makes Ventura cheaper per night than Queen Victoria, Arcadia and QM2, and about £8 a night more expensive than Scarlet Lady. It wasn't a classic trip, but it was better than real life, and I am going back. But not until March 2028, and I've got 24 other cruises booked between now and then. 4 November nights on Ventura, done.